Before we get started with today's episode, we have a very special note from Francesca, one of our podcasters, and she has some inspirational words
Hello.
to share.
My name is Francesca, and I am a proud member of the podcast Amongst the Books. Right now, the world is pretty different, and there are a lot of new things going on. Considering the fact that the impact on COVID-19 has impacted my life so much, there are other people in the world where COVID-19 will forever change their lives and the lives of many others. Yes, I am talking about our amazing first responders during this crisis, and I want to say thank you to every one of them. During these difficult times, the first responders have been there on the front line to help, and I cannot even describe how grateful I am for them, because they have been providing people like me with food, safety, and comfort. Even though the doctors and the nurses are the ones fighting this virus firsthand, I want to say that I am grateful for the other essential workers too, like the truck drivers, supermarket employees, restaurant workers, mailmen, and so many more. I would like to give a special thanks, though, to the doctors and nurses, because they are the ones making the miracles like saving people who become sick with COVID-19 and doing more research about those who have died. And by people like me who are staying home and social distancing, we are doing our part to help stop the spread of coronavirus as well. So to all those out there who are handling this crisis firsthand, I want to give you the biggest thank you. We will get through this together, and remember, this too shall pass. This is Francesca, signing off.
While we live through a time of uncertainty, it is nice to know that while we talk with Daniel Handler, also known as Lemony Snicket, we can still have a good laugh. Who would have thought he created a series of unfortunate events? Welcome to Amongst the Books, a podcast for kids, by kids, and yes, adults too. We got to chat with Mr. Handler, and though we had some technical glitches and tough questions, we giggled constantly. Join us while we get to know a little bit more about this very talented author and how index cards can take over a dining room table, and how an accordion is necessary to any good band.
I've never heard of that happening before.
I know,
Something wrong with technology. Is this the first time it's gone wrong?
Yeah, pretty much. So first, let me say thank you so much for taking the time to do this. We really do appreciate it. These kids are super excited to be talking with you. I know some of them are like literally like they were jumping down in their seats not that long ago.
They were jumping down in their seats?
Like,
Only
you know,
down?
Yeah,
Oh, so
pretty much.
also up. They were jumping up and
They were
down.
jumping up and down, yes.
I thought it was
I don't
only
know if
down.
it's possible to jump
So they were
down.
going lower and lower and lower and lower. Bad and upsetting, I think.
So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do just a little like introduction, and then these kids are going to take it away. They are really good with the questions, so be prepared for that.
I will try to be good with answers.
Okay. So thank you everybody for joining us today. We are welcomed by Mr. Daniel Handler, also known as Lemony Snicket.
Hello.
And my students have some amazing questions for him today. So I'm going to let them take it away. Yay?
Some amazing questions.
Amazing questions.
Okay, that sounds a little, I was hoping that they would be unchallenging for me, but they're amazing.
They're amazing.
I'm gonna have to focus a lot more than I anticipated.
Yeah, they're gonna be hard-hitting ones, so.
All right, I'm bracing myself.
All right, so Emma, why don't you start us off, okay?
Okay, so looking back at your work, like all of it, are you proud of your work? Like your books that you made?
Am I proud of it? That's an interesting question.
Told you.
Yeah, I know. No. No. I think when I look back at anything that I've written, I think to myself, oh, surely you could have done better than that. It feels like looking at old photographs of yourself and you say to yourself, I did my hair like that, I wore that, person was my friend, why was I standing next to them? They're a terrible person. So I think I look upon my work with a mixture of regret and sadness. But then I tell myself, well, you probably did the best you could do at the time. And then I remind myself that in thousands of years, everything will be gone, including me, certainly, and all of the work. And so there's really no point in worrying about it at all. But lately, that hasn't been as cheering a thought as it might otherwise be.
Okay. Emily, go.
Yeah.
Hello, Emily.
Hi. How did you get the idea of Count Olaf as such of a crazy villain?
Wow. Well, first of all, I would say that despite that you clearly have nothing hanging on your walls, which is startling to me behind
Oh, I have something over there.
I think it's particularly startling because your sweatshirt identifies you as a fan of a major painter, and yet you have nothing on your walls, which is an interesting combination. But despite that, I would say that I'm envious of your entire life because you appear never to have met a villainous person, whereas I meet terrible people at almost every day. I'll meet a terrible person. And so to think about all of the terrible people in the world, well, I don't always meet them personally, but sometimes I might read about them or they might be on television explaining to me how little they've done. And that is where all the ideas for any villain that anyone could write about comes from. Terrible people that I've known previously or made aware of. So I'm envious that you apparently have no terrible people. My first thought was, Emily is obviously locked in a cell. She's locked in a cell with nothing on the walls, so there must be a lot of wicked people in her life. But now I'm thinking, no, it's not the case. She's perfectly happy with nothing on the walls.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm glad. I would hate to think of you miserable because there'd be nothing I could do about it.
Oh, goodness. So, who's next, guys?
Next, what's happening?
Yes. Sophia, go.
What would you say was the hardest thing of making a book into a movie and changing little things to turn it into a movie?
Oh, the hardest thing? I think the hardest thing is that when you're working on a book, you're all alone. Like mostly I'm all alone in this room that you see, or sometimes prior to the pandemic, I was all alone in a library, in a room in a library or in a cafe or something like that. And you can't make a movie all by yourself. It's not a movie or a television show, like a series of events. So many people have to be working on it. And so when you say something like, and then there's a lake, all of the people whose job it is to design the lake and dig a hole and fill it with water and paint the inside and decorate it on the outside and shine the lights on it and hold a microphone up to the lake and later add some computer effects so it looks more like a lake. They all have a bunch of questions for you. And if you've never answered questions like that before, you might do what I'm sure you do when you're at school, whether in a physical classroom or on Zoom, when someone asks you a question and you don't know the answer, you pretend there's some kind of technical difficulty.
Yes.
So that was the toughest part, is that people would ask me questions and I would say, I don't know, and run away or invent some kind of technical difficulty. Maybe if someone asks me a really challenging question, I'll invent a technical difficulty today. Wouldn't that be exciting?
All of a sudden your screen freezes. All
Right.
that happens. Yeah.
Or I decide that I'm going to answer. Which is something I would never want to repeat.
No, never. All right, Miriam, I saw your hand raised.
Yeah, so
Hi, Miriam.
in the book, they never did reveal what was in the sugar bowl.
That's true. It's very frustrating, don't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you write what's in the sugar bowl, what would it be?
If I were to write what was in the sugar bowl, what would it be? What a fascinating question. I'm not sure. Do you have something? If you were writing a sugar bowl, would you have something that you would put in it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Rosalind, what?
In many ways, I think secrets are more exciting than the answer, right? Like when
Yeah.
the secret is exciting and the answer is hardly ever exciting. If you see someone and they say, wait, and you say, wait, what are you holding in the hand? And you say, nothing. And then you're able to pick it up off the ground, then it turns out to be a receipt for toothpaste, and you wonder why you were so interested in the first place. So But I will say that about once a year, someone writes me and says that they've been reading a series of unfortunate events very carefully. They have a theory about what is in the sugar bowl, and about once a year, the theory is the same as the theory that I have. So that's interesting to me. So while no one ever tells you what's in the sugar bowl, you can kind of figure it out if you reread the books over and over again. However, if you reread the books over and over again, you will become depressed and upset.
Oh.
You have to decide whether you want to shatter yourself as a person just to learn what's in a sugar bowl, or if you want to go on as strongly as you can through life. That's your choice.
Okay. Yeah. Rosalind, you had your hand raised. Do you want to ask?
Hello, Rosalind.
Hello. What's your book writing process?
My book writing process. Well, I carry a notebook with me wherever I go. On days when I'm not really allowed to go anywhere. And if something occurs to me that might be interested in a book, I write it down in my notebook. And then when my notebook is full, I take out my computer, which I can't show you because I'm talking to it. And I write down everything that's in the notebook in the computer. And then I print out that document. And this is where I begin to seem less like an artist and more like a crazy person. And I cut out all of the tiny things that are written down. The document looks like this with a bunch of little things. And I cut them all out and I tape them onto index cards. And then I move the index cards around on my dining room table. Although I have an argument going with some people in my family. Some people in my family think the dining room table is for eating at, and some people think it's for moving around index cards. So there's always a little bit of an argument. And then when the index cards are in an order that I like them, I take one of my favorite thing in the world, which is a legal pad, which looks like this, and I write down sentences more or less in order. And then I type them back into the computer, and then I print them back out, and the sentences are terrible, all of them. So that's a few days of despair. And then I go back and I try to make the sentences better. And it takes a long time, and all the time I look like a crazy person because I'm doing things like moving index cards around and crumpling up pieces of paper on legal pads.
Well, maybe you can use the index cards that you don't like as like napkins or, you know, like coasters or something on the dining room table for everybody.
Yeah, well, when I'm done with the index cards, I put them in a plastic bin. And then I have many plastic bins in my basement because some people say someday someone will want to see all of the index cards that you have for your books, but I don't know if that's true.
You never know. You never know.
I don't know. I don't know.
All right, Francesca, go.
Hi.
Hello, Francesca.
Since the characters and the character traits in a series of unfortunate events are so unique, did anything inspire you to create them?
Yes, I think paying attention to people. I enjoy teaching. That's one of my favorite hobbies. And one of the things I miss most during these strange times where you are staying at home so often is that I don't get to wander the streets eavesdropping on people. So I would eavesdrop on people and they would say interesting things. And those are some of the things that go into my notebook that I was discussing earlier. So yes, I eavesdrop on people and I take notes. So that's the trouble with being a writer, is that people near you, if they utter something, up in a book.
Are
Right,
you
I'm kind of working on a story about a young woman who's trapped in a room with nothing on the walls, even though she's a fan of a famous painter, and how awful it must be to sit around staring at blank walls, wishing you were looking at the work of an impressionist. That's just the story that I'm working on right now. I haven't been working on it very long.
I don't know who you could be thinking of at all.
I do.
I'm
I
going to jail.
know. I thought that was pretty obvious.
So are you like a people watcher too?
Yes, I
Yeah.
do enjoy watching people.
And
I'm
does
just
that
actually from the grocery store, which of course was which, as a friend of mine said, the grocery stores are now masked balls because everyone's
yes.
wearing a mask. And it was fun to watch people, a mask, including a man and a woman who I presume were in love, who were kissing each other through their masks. That was funny. That was
Aw.
people watching.
Well, it's nice to see that there's still romance during this time. So
Oh, of course. I think romance is probably at a higher pitch.
yes.
I don't know if romance is really the topic we necessarily
No.
should.
Right, yeah.
But if
Um,
any of you later want romantic advice or would like to tell me your romantic secrets, I, of course, am all ears.
all right. So, Annabelle, go.
In the book, The Incomplete History of Secret Organizations, some letters in the words have been bolded to create other words. What is
Yes.
up with that? And I have notes on it. Sorry for people who can't see it because I've created a couple of
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I like what you're doing. Yes, that book is, I would say, almost overwhelmingly full of codes.
It is. It's very hard.
It is. It's almost as if all of life has something going on beneath the surface. So if you listen to family members and they're saying something, they might really mean something else. Or if your teacher says something like, we're going to have an interview with an author, maybe she's lying and she's just hired some kind of actor, the author in question. There's always, I think, a secret lurking. And a code is one of the more obvious examples that I think all of us know. There's a secret underneath the world at all times.
There you go. Okay, Joel.
Hi, Joel.
How did you learn the book?
Joel's audio is not working.
Yeah, Joel, do you have like headphones or a microphone you could use?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so why don't you put those on? That might help a little bit with your audio. Okay, so try again.
How did you learn to play the accordion?
How did I learn to play the accordion? That's an enchanting question. Well, when I was young, I was made to take piano lessons, which I enjoyed moderately. And then when I was a young man, a friend of mine asked if I wanted to be in a band, which I thought would be a very glamorous thing to do. And I said, yes, I play the piano. And they said, we don't want a piano player in our band at all. That's terrible. And so I said, maybe I could play the accordion. And I went to an accordion factory, which is now closed, where there were gazillions of accordions. And I took a tour of the factory. And at the end, I said, could I buy an accordion for hardly any money? And they said, sure, why not? And I did. I sat home playing the accordion poorly and eventually rose to the level of mediocre, which I attained to this day. Do you play an instrument, Joel? Are you a musician?
I play the clarinet.
The clarinet, that's an admirable instrument. And a thing about the clarinet and the accordion that they have in common is that they're both many cultures. The accordion was something of a Romani or gypsy instrument, so it traveled from culture to culture, and the clarinet is kind of a similar thing. So you can play along with a lot of different types of music with both the accordion and the clarinet.
Yeah, I think pretty much everyone who's involved with this podcast plays an instrument, right? Raise your hand, guys, if you play an instrument. Yeah, they all do.
I don't.
No? You sing? Do you dance?
Not really.
No? Do you?
I'm more into art.
Oh, that's fine. So you could design the cover for our album.
There you go.
Sure.
That's what we can have. We can have an Amongst the Books band now. I didn't realize this.
Fantastic, yeah.
You could sing our podcast.
There you go.
And then you could just also stare mournfully into space. Anybody can do that.
Yes, we'll be very emo.
That's a big part of music, is staring mournfully into space. I'm very good at it, actually. So if you don't want to do it, I'm
Awesome. Xana, do you have a question?
Yeah. What relation does Beatrice Baudelaire have to the other Baudelaires?
What relation does Beatrice Baudelaire have to the other Baudelaires? That's kind of a complicated question. But I would say that one thing that's confusing, both in life and in literature, is when more than one person has the same name.
Yes.
That's confusing.
It does.
Yeah.
I know how that feels, right, Emily?
I think we were all mournfully staring into space. That's what
Yes.
I felt.
We were practicing there.
Yeah.
So in translating the books to film, I know we touched on it a little bit. Do you find it like the process similar to the writing style of a book, writing a script, or is it a little different in the fact that you're not describing so much the atmosphere, the feelings that the people are having. You're relating it on the way the actor is portraying it.
Well, there is a lot of description actually in writing for film or television, but as I said, the description is very collaborative. So you might say they walk under a giant archway, and then the people building the set will say, we're not going to have a giant archway, we're going to have a long hallway. And not only that, the hallway has to be super long because that's where we're going to put the camera, which means that people have to talk way more in the hallway. So your scene in the hallway has to be long, and there can be no scene under an archway. Things like that happen all the time. So that's very different from writing a book where it doesn't really matter what you say. If you talk about an archway, no one says we can't build an archway.
Right. Very true. And when you started writing, was this something that you started as like a young adult, a young kid? Like, was it something that you kind of fell into, or did you have a feeling?
I was always a big reader, so I read a lot. And I was always interested in being around literature. So I wrote a lot as a young age, and I didn't ever get to be a writer, but I wanted to read, and I wanted to be around.
Okay.
I
Go,
have-
Emily.
In the book, you would always explain words, like big words, and then you would always have an explanation for that. Did you put those in the book on purpose so you can basically kind of teach kids better vocabulary?
Oh no, I'm not. I don't think thinking about what you can teach people is a good way to write a book. I think many boring books are written that way, including all of your textbooks are written with the something, and I think that leads to very boring literature. But I thought it was interesting, and also I like talking about words. So the very first word that's defined in a series of unfortunate events is the word rickety. And I remember that when I was first writing the word rickety, I thought it's such a shame to just write the word rickety and not get to talk about it for a minute. So I talked about it for a minute.
I like it. Emma, I know you have another one. Go.
How long does it usually take for you to like create a plot for a book?
It really depends. Sometimes it comes to me like a lightning bolt, although I've never actually been struck by lightning, so I don't know what that is. That's me. So I guess that was a poor comparison. But sometimes it bubbles and takes a long time. And sometimes I think I have the perfect story, and then I don't after all, and I have to go back and chop it all up and tell it to grow new arms and legs. So it really depends. I don't know. I mean, that's the thing with ideas, right? Where did you get the idea for that question? You don't know.
Yeah.
Did it take a long time or a short time? Well, I don't know. Who knows?
Right. Okay, so I know Rosalind had her hand raised. So, and then I see the order. So don't worry, guys. We'll get you all in. Go, Rosalind.
So this might sound like completely not related to a series of unfortunate events, but from the series, All the Wrong Questions, did you add any other connections to a series of unfortunate events other than Snicket, like the character himself?
Well, I think both All the Wrong Questions and a series of unfortunate events are kind of part of one enormous story. So I think the more you look at them, the more connections you see. But that to me feels like going through life as well. That what may seem like disparate elements turns out to be one large sinister story.
Okay. I know, Joel, you're up.
What was your like at
I don't know what it is. Hi, Joel.
University?
Okay, wait, Joel, do that again, okay?
Hello. Okay. What was your life like at Wesleyan University?
My life at Wesleyan University? Okay. Well, I had a nice time. I worked very closely with a writer who kind of became my mentor, and she just died recently, which I was sad about. But when I arrived at university, I knew I wanted to be a writer. But so I signed up for a class that was taught by a very famous writer, and you had to go be interviewed by her in order to go to the class. She said, on the first day of class, I want you to memorize a poem and we're all gonna gather in a field and lie down and recite the poetry. And I thought, what? I thought, I don't want to do that. And so I thought to myself, I guess I don't want to be a writer because I don't want to do that. And so I didn't take the class. And then I happened to meet this other woman who became my mentor. And she said, here's what I do in my writing class. Everybody writes 10 pages per week. And we don't meet in a group. You meet with me alone at the kitchen table. And I tell you what's wrong with your writing and how you might improve it. I like that class a lot. And so I spent a lot of time in her kitchen. I had friends my own age, of course, but I spent a lot of time in her kitchen, and she taught me many things about being a writer and about being a reader. She was always recommending me things to read. And I admire her a lot, and I miss her. So that was a lot of time as I appreciate that question because it's made me remember nice things to do.
There you go. Yeah, and I don't know anything about recommending books to kids at all. I don't know what that feels like. Right, guys?
Totally.
Yeah, that's like totally not what we do.
No.
You have an illiterate who's kind of leading your group. That's got to be a big challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a unique librarian, is all I can say. Miriam, you had a question.
Yeah. So what was your like inspiration while writing Series of Unfortunate Events?
My inspiration? I guess other books that I admire and terrible things that were going on that I enjoyed thinking about. I don't know, it's hard to say what inspiration is. It's kind of like, where does an idea come from? It's a very liquid question. I like to take long walks, so a long walk is inspiration. I have some things on my desk that I keep for inspiration, like this is a little bell. I don't know if you can see it.
Mm-hmm.
I've always wanted one of these bells that you see in old movies mostly. And then
Yeah.
myself, well, why don't you purchase one? And so I did. And when I feel that I've accomplished something, I ring the bell. I'm going to ring it now, and it might be loud on the audio. I don't know how that will go, but I find the sound of the bell very inspiring. So here it is.
I love it.
Beautiful.
It is.
Need
it's
one
beautiful.
of those.
I should get one of those for the library. That's how I know the
That'd
kids
be
come
nice. They'd just be like, hey, what books do you want? Ding, ding, ding.
It was so years that I wanted this bell. For some reason, I thought it was impossible. And then I finally walked into a hardware store and I bought one for, I think, $2.
See, I can do that.
Yeah.
That's a steal.
Exactly. Okay, Annabelle, go.
Who's your favorite Baudelaire?
My favorite. Well, this will seem like kind of a ridiculous answer, but my absolute favorite Baudelaire is Charles Baudelaire, who is a French poet. And where Baudelaire haunted me for many Unfortunate Events. So I'm a big fan of Charles Baudelaire. And I don't know how old you guys are, but when I was about 12, I was in the adult section of the library rather than the children's section. And I saw that there was a book called Flowers of Evil. I knew nothing about.
Wow.
And the cover of the book was one of those library editions where it has no information. So it just said Flowers of Evil. And I thought, that's really good. And so I checked it out, and it turned out to be a book of French poetry by Charles Baudelaire, which had been translated into English, luckily, and was about all kinds of sinister things and fascinating things, some of which even are completely inappropriate to discuss with children, so I won't bring them up. Okay. But I read the book, and I was very fascinated by it, and I remain a fan of Baudelaire to this day. In fact, while in line at the grocery store, I read some Baudelaire today. That's how much I like Baudelaire. Charles Baudelaire is my favorite Baudelaire.
Okay.
It's yours, right?
See, you guys learned something. You learned about a new author. I love it.
Yes.
Annabelle's favorite Baudelaire was Violet because her hair is tied up, but that might be a coincidence. I don't know.
Sophia, go.
Would you say that writing makes you like exhausted or makes you energized?
I think both. I think when I get exhausted from writing, it's a good kind of exhausting. Like when you have a wonderful day, but you're ready to go to bed at the end of it. It's that kind of exhausting. When I write poorly, it's the bad kind of exhausting. And then I might have something like lie on the floor and listen to music that makes me feel better, or go on a long walk, or get cranky. Sometimes you just need to be cranky for a little while to feel better.
Yeah.
It's not a nice thing to admit about ourselves, but sometimes it can be fun to get cranky, or maybe you can get someone else cranky. That's always fun. A picture book by Lemony Snicket is called The Bad Mood and the Stick, and part of that is about how much fun it is to give somebody else a bad mood. That if you're in a bad mood and you give it to somebody else, you actually feel better.
Yes, because you get rid of it a little bit.
Yeah, in the book, Matthew Forsythe, who is the illustrator, he's actually drawn the bad mood, so you see it move all over the world from person to person.
So how is it seeing your writing come to life through pictures, like with a picture book? Like, because you write both, and now you're writing for screen too. So how does that like feel when you see your words come to life in different formats?
Well, it's very interesting. Rosalind is probably better at answering this question than I am because she's into art, but I can't draw at all. And so I'm always fascinated by when I start to work with an illustrator, and they'll say, oh, look, it could look like this. And we'll say, or it could look like this. And I'll say, oh, that was so magical. How did you do that?
Right.
I'm also married to an illustrator. I'm married to the illustrator, Lisa Brown. And so I'm constantly fascinated because she sketches all the time. We'll just be talking about something and then she'll draw something and it will be really beautiful. And I, meanwhile, will have done nothing. So I'm very envious. And I'm always fascinated by what they see and what they want to draw a picture of.
It is. It's pretty impressive how they see but where they get their inspiration from and what they're able to do, but it's the same on how you get inspiration and you're able to write it down, where some people wouldn't be able to write as well.
Right.
So it's different. It's different inspiration and how you're creative with it. So
I quite agree.
Okay, so Francesca, you're up, kid.
Why did you decide to portray Lemony Snicket as a sad character throughout the series?
Well, gosh, Lemony Snicket has had so many terrible things happen to him. If you weren't sad, I think that would be quite remarkable, don't you? If you said, oh, well, nothing but horror and murderous rampages have existed in my life, and yet I'm singing a happy tune all of the time, I think that would be really disconcerting.
They'd make him like a psychopath or something, because that's what they do. They're just like completely happy throughout everything.
Happiness is very, it's hard to trust happiness. And I think sadness and loneliness in particular are really interesting things. I think there's a large history of literature that is loneliness, because so much of literature is made alone, and people are a little lonely when you do it. And reading can kind of be a lonely experience in a good way, right? Mm-hmm. You sit someplace and only you know the kind of conversation that you're having with a book and the interaction that you're having. So I think loneliness is very interesting, and I think all my favorite books are about loneliness. So I think when I started writing books, I thought that they should probably be as lonely as I could make them.
But it's funny that it's the loneliness, but you are bringing joy to so many readers because they are loving your writing. So it's the loneliness that they're reading that they seem to love a little bit.
I guess so, but I think that when you really love a book, that is a lonely kind of happiness, right? Because you're by yourself reading, probably. Maybe someone is reading to you, or maybe you're all reading together, but most people's experience of literature is a little lonely, which I think is nice.
Yeah.
I enjoy being lonely.
Yeah. I mean, we're all experiencing it right now in some way, so we're all a little lonely, I think, right now.
Driven crazy. I think more people are driven crazy right now than being lonely.
True.
Who here feels more lonely now than they do normally? And who feels about the same level of lonely? And who feels less lonely? Yeah.
Yeah. I know I'm lonely because I'm missing these guys. So I don't get to see these guys every day. That's what I'm missing.
You have some action figures to keep you company, though. That must be nice.
I do. I have my Wonder Woman collection, so I get to look at those guys.
Yeah.
Gals,
I think is the word you mean. I think they're gals.
They're gals. They're Wonder Gals. Yes. Zanab, go. Oh, Zanab, you're on mute, kid.
So Annabelle and I ask our classical questions, and we are here to ask, what is your zodiac sign?
What is my zodiac sign?
Yes.
Zodiac sign is Pisces. That is my zodiac sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have we had any Pisces yet, guys? I don't even know.
I think when we did the one of the other
Girl, I
comic
think
books.
one of them was a Pisces.
Okay.
Yeah, like me.
Yeah.
Yeah. My birthday is February 28th, which is a nice time to have a birthday.
It's been exactly 2 months since your birthday.
Yeah. So happy belated.
Thank you very much. I was hoping someone might bring me some cupcakes today, but I guess it won't happen.
I didn't know, so next time I will bring you some cupcakes.
I have cupcakes
Yes.
in my dining room.
Joel, say that again.
I have cupcakes in my dining room right now.
Oh, yeah?
He has cupcakes in his
They're red velvet.
So you're just saying that to rub it in, and I won't get any cupcakes?
I think so.
I feel like
Indirectly, yes.
So who's next? Who has a question, guys? Okay, Rosalind, go.
This is gonna sound really weird, but did Count Olaf secretly have a crush on Kit Snicket? Because in both the series and I believe the last book, the end, he kisses Kit before they both die.
True.
So do they have a thing for each other?
Yeah, I liked how they put it. Did he have a crush on her? Because I think a crush always implies that they don't know it, right? That one person doesn't know it. That usually is what I think of when I think of a crush. But I definitely think that they appear to have had some sort of romantic history or interlude. And I think one of the interesting things about growing up is realizing that so many adults around you have been involved in romantic interlude and intrigue. When you're young, you don't think about it much, and then the older you get, you think about it more and more, and it's always kind of startling.
Very true.
Yeah. Like, I don't know if you know anything about your educator's romantic life or her life of intrigue. I'm sure you get curious about it from time to time. And someday you'll find out something will let slip. You'll learn something. It'll be an intriguing day.
Maybe someday. Maybe.
Yeah. Right.
Never know.
Like, notice how we're pretending that we've never met, for instance.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Maybe we're
Yeah, you never know. We've known each other for years.
Right.
Okay, Emma, go.
What's your favorite book that you have written?
Well, they're all pretty terrible. I don't know. Yeah, I think that goes back to the question of pride. I don't know if pride.
Who's going for a walk?
Fine,
Sorry, that was my mom.
Okay.
I didn't realize I was going to have to do everyone's chores.
Yes.
No.
All right. So Emily, go.
Did the show portray the book as best as it could, or do you think there's some things that the show could have been better in, or?
I think the answer to both questions is yes. I think the show did the best that they could. Everyone worked really, really hard. It was very inspiring to see people work hard. I was involved with, I ran the writer's room for most of the show. So in my dining room, I had a handful of writers who were working with me, and they were working very hard. And I got to see all the designers and costume people working hard, and the actors worked very hard. Mr. Harris, Neil Patrick Harris, worked very, very hard to develop his own character. So I think everyone worked to the best that they could. And sometimes parts of it were disappointing to me, but you know, as I said, I enjoy being lonely, and disappointment is part of loneliness. So that wasn't a big deal.
You were setting yourself up for it.
Exactly. When I felt too upset about it, all I would have to do is go like this.
And it's over. You found your happy place in that bell.
Actually, I do that. Thank you very much.
Okay, Joel, go for it.
Have you played any video games?
No, I'm not much of a player of video games. No. I like a card game, but I don't like much of a video game.
All right, what's your favorite card game? Is it is it solitaire?
Oh, I guess that would have been a perfect answer. No, but I like Bridge a lot, which is a 4-person card game. It's fun to sit around with 3 other people and talk and sip a delightful beverage and play cards at the same time. That's a nice time.
It is. I like playing with like my family when I'm able to. So that's always a fun.
My niece and I are trying to design a game that you can play via social distance.
Oh.
Online social distancing game. We meet a few times a week on FaceTime and try to figure it out, which is pretty fun.
There you go. My nephew is actually learning how to play chess with my father right now. So through FaceTime and stuff. So they're working on it.
Is everyone something different during this time?
That's a question to you guys. What are y'all doing?
Nothing.
I'm trying to teach my cat how to sit.
Oh, that strikes me as challenging.
Yes.
Yeah.
Trying to teach my dog how to not eat everything, 'cause that's what he's been doing lately.
Oh, teach somebody how not to do something. That's harder, I think. It's harder for them not to do something than it is to do something.
Yes, very hard. Miriam, what are you doing?
I'm fasting. It's Ramadan.
That's right. That's right. So you're fasting right now.
Yeah.
And I made sugar cookies yesterday while fasting.
That's tough.
That's really tough.
I also belong to a culture that does fast days, and so I know how it feels to cook while you're fasting.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard, yeah.
And then my brother sat there eating the cookie in front of me.
Oh, your brother.
Oh,
Yeah.
that terrible brother.
He's not terrible.
Oh, okay. The so-so brother.
Just a cookie
eater. Cookie eater.
Okay, so Francesca, you go.
So one of my favorite characters are the two pale-faced ladies in Count Olaf's troops, and I was really wondering how you came up with them.
Well, in my hometown of San Francisco, there was a pair of famous twins. And they're no longer with us now, but they were women and they dressed identically every day and they went around walking and they were so cool. When I was young, I was very fascinated with them. And it didn't occur to me until years later that after I started the books that I think that's where they came from, but it is. And the actresses who were in the Netflix adaptation were twins and they were very interesting. And when they came to audition, they sang a little song together, did a short dance, and that's when we knew that we had the perfect actresses to play the twins.
Did you have, were you involved with the casting?
Not really. I mean, sometimes I didn't, it wasn't my decision, but sometimes they would say, hey, who do you think would be good? And then I got to watch people audition too, which was fun.
Oh, that's gotta be fun. Seeing your characters brought to life that way.
It's fun, but it's also a little stressful because everyone's auditioning and not everyone's going to get the part. So you have to be a little cold-hearted.
Oh, a little mean. Okay, so we have time for about 2 more questions. So who has one? Who wants to go? Okay, Joel, go.
Do you have any words of inspiration? Do you have inspiration for aspiring writers?
Words for aspiring writers. Was that what I heard in the audio?
Yes. Yeah. Do you have any words for aspiring writers?
Yeah. Well, I think it's mostly things that I've already said. I think learning how to be lonely, learning how to be better at being lonely is very good. I think eavesdropping is an important part of being lonely. And I think that if you're really interested in being a writer, it's nice to write things down. Like I kind of play around with them as sentences. Sometimes I think when you're writing, you only write when you're ready to write a story. And I think it's better to kind of always keep writing and always keep scribbling things down. Plus, I find it amusing and fun.
Yeah, it is. I always find myself scribbling something down. So I have more Post-it notes spread out across my notebooks and stuff than I think a normal person should have.
People like Post-it notes. Obviously, the best is the legal pad.
Yes.
Beloved legal pad.
That and your bell. You need your bell. All right. Okay, so we got Rosalind, and then we'll finish with Annabelle.
Annabelle has the Rosalind is the penultimate question, and then Annabelle has the last. Is that what's happening?
Yes.
In the bad beginning, Count Olaf tries to marry Violet in an attempt to get the Baudelaire fortune. Are there any laws that actually back this up?
Are there any laws that actually back this up? You mean, have people been married off to other people for the wrong reasons before in history? Yes, almost constantly. Yeah. For most of human history, most of the people on this call were the proper age for marriage. That's what's so frightening.
Yeah.
We don't know, but there's plenty of historical evidence. I wish I would say, no, that's something that I made up myself, but people made it up long, long before me.
Oh, yes. Unfortunately, yes.
I guess. I don't know. I don't think I would have been good marriage material when I was younger.
I don't think so either. I don't think I would have been, so.
I'm just assuming that all of you are unmarried, by the way. I mean, all of the students.
Yeah.
Of course, for sure, but I just kind of assume.
Well, we don't know. Maybe.
None of my business.
Yeah. All right, Annabelle.
Annabelle, this is the last question, and the last question has to kind of summarize the entire conversation and all of the enormous issues that have been at play, and
so
bring the world of literature into one small, perfect question. That's your job.
So no pressure whatsoever, kid.
No pressure.
Zodiac question aside.
Yeah, no. Who do you think is a better couple, Klaus and Fiona or Klaus and Isadora?
Interesting.
Yeah.
I like that we're ending on a question of romance, because that's very interesting. And one thing that I find intriguing about romance is sometimes something that is more dangerous and more exciting and more alluring seems better than something that is safe.
Yeah.
And that is the history of literature and the history of human beings. But thank you for ending on a question of romance. I'm going to go off and think about that by myself now.
See, good question, kid.
Okay.
So, I mean, yeah, we do have to end, unfortunately, but this was great. We had a really good time doing this, right, guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mine too. I bet one person secretly didn't have a good time, but we'll never know who that person is.
No, we'll never know. Unless they write about it. We'll never know.
Maybe. All right,
yes, thank you so much. Be safe. Have fun.
Adios. Arrivederci.
We certainly laughed during this interview, and our podcasters asked some tough questions to Mr. Handler. But through the giggles, we learned a lot. Thank you to Daniel Handler. You can follow him on Instagram at author Daniel Handler or on Twitter at Daniel Handler. Also, be sure to check out the live action show of a series of unfortunate events on Netflix. You can follow Amongst the Books wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to rate and review us. We would love to hear from you. You can also follow us on Instagram at Amongst the Books Podcast or on Twitter at AmongstTheBooks_podcast. Our theme music was written, recorded, and produced by Jake Thistle. We hope you have enjoyed this episode, and we hope that you keep listening because we have some great new episodes coming your way. Stay safe, stay happy, and keep reading.